The way we got Roastar started was looking at and discovering who coffee roasters were and what their problems were.
You're going to get unmatched, legendary customer experience here from start to finish.
Roastar has evolved a ton over the last few years. We've invested in new equipment and technologies. We have really put a lot of effort into continuous improvement out on the shop floor.
What I'm most proud of with Roastar is I love how they seek cutting-edge technology.
We also make things that are really cool for really cool customers too.
We're really interested in getting to know our customer and discovering what we can do to help them out.
Any questions for me before we get going? Or any thoughts?
Do you think what we got, is that okay? Seeing the roaster in the background like that? Is that?
I think that's perfect.
Okay,
I saw it right away. Yeah, it looks good. I mean, it's not the fireplace, but it's still pretty nice.
The fireplace with the... Yes. A little cozier.
All right. Well, let's get started. And I'll start by just welcoming everyone. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Coffee People podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Woldt. The show is presented by Roastar Coffee Packaging, which you can find online at roastar.com. Please go there so that they continue supporting the show. I appreciate it. And if you like the show, you can also go online to coffeepeoplepodcast.com. You'll find recaps of this episode, our Coffee Smarter podcast, all the other random coffee stuff that we kind of compile every month. And if you haven't poured a cup of coffee yet, now is the time. I'm popping in today with one of our previous guests, Michael Barthmus, the CEO, founder, the face of the iconic Sivitz roasting machines, as it's entered a second life in the industry. You can find them online at Sivitz.com or The Sivitz on Instagram, where you'll see the SRM15. It's their stainless steel handmade fluid bed coffee roaster. All those links in our show notes. And of course, you can detour through our newsletter if you want. Michael, welcome back to Coffee People. Thanks for taking a minute to check in with us.
Thank you very much, Ryan. It's great to be here again.
It's been a couple of winters since we last spoke, for the show at least. I saw you at Hacea this year, or 2024, I suppose. You know, a lot has happened. In particular, I see you are sitting in a new space. You know, what's new over at Sivitz?
Yeah, we moved into a new headquarters. Got a nice, pretty big space where we've got the roaster and we do, demos here, and we can bring guests in. We're only an hour from Portland, so even though we're not in the thick of it, it's an easy drive. And we've had several visitors come by and come in, and we can. It's one thing to read about a roaster or to check the website, but seeing it in action and being in front of it and being able to answer all the questions that arise, has been very beneficial. And I've seen an uptick in interest now that we have the showroom.
I've seen a kind of a plethora of photos of you standing next to a new customer, smiling, congratulating them on their new roaster. In the 2 years since we talked for the show, it seems like across the country, there are more Sivitz out there. How does that feel? As the last time we talked, you were still kind of in the throes of re-educating people on the brand. What's that been like for you?
It's been great. I mean, for the most part, in the very beginning, for the first year, in the second year even, we were just seeing sales on the East Coast. There's kind of more of a Sivitz tradition over there, even though it's a West Coast brand. Mike Sivitz was based in Corvallis. We've got a couple of machines in California now. We've got Oregon. We've got Washington. We've got two in Arizona. So it's kind of evened out now to where if you look at the map of the U.S. Of where we have our roasters, that is kind of evened out. And 24 was our best year yet, and we had the most sales. And so it's just been fun to be a part of this and to get validation that the updates and the upgrades we've made from Michael Sivitz's days seem to be hitting the mark, and people that wanted to see some improvements, we've addressed those issues and kind of brought the roaster into the 21st century. So that's been really kind of fun to see and be a part of. A lot of it also has to do with the growth of awareness of air roasting, whether it's a hybrid air roaster like a Loring or an IMF, or whether it's a pure fluid bed roaster like the Sivitz. The overall awareness and recognition of air roasting as an alternative, better alternative, a win-win situation where you can roast more coffee with less, more with less. So it's kind of this win-win that seems to be appealing to especially production roasters.
Sure. When we were chatting in 2022, we were kind of in the heart of this chaotic supply chain. Have things gotten better or just different or more chaotic? I mean, are you still just doing everything, internally, locally, and domestically, rather?
Yeah, we're doing everything. When I talked to you, we were still building them here in Hood River. And since then, I've found a fabricator in Beaverton, just outside of Portland, and they do the complete assembly and everything up to creating it and getting it ready to ship out. They use only stainless steel. It's a stainless steel manufacturer, so everything you see on the roaster there is stainless steel. That the supply chain issues have definitely dissolved over time. In the beginning, we had the problem that there wasn't enough supply, and we were just the little guy, so we were put at the back of the line. So that made a difficult situation even more difficult. Now we find ourselves in a position where those things have kind of leveled out, and we're able to get all the components and parts that we need. We source our blowers and fans here in the U.S. From New York Blower, our burners, our Midco burners out of Chicago. So most of the roaster, almost every component is still sourced and built in the U.S.
This is a question that's just kind of coming to me as you're talking about these U.S.-based companies. We're going into an administration transition, and the word tariff is in the news a lot. Does it help kind of not worry about changes in your partnerships with people because they're domestic, or is there still concern there?
It remains to be seen. I think most of our competitors are U.S. based anyway. So that isn't going to change much. I think in the smaller, like 3 kilo, 5 kilo, in that size, there's a lot more competition from overseas that I think they are going to be, maybe benefiting from that a little more than we will. Because those cheaper products coming from overseas are going to be marked up, and that will give them a more competitive advantage. But for us, most of our competition is either coming from the U.S. Or Europe. So
right.
I haven't heard any talks yet about tariffs coming from European products. I mean, I have heard, but nothing has been finalized yet. And the focus seems to be on the Far East and Canada and Mexico.
I think, like many, I've been taking a little bit of a break from the news, but I just think about it as, it's one of those things where businesses are beholden to, all sorts of factors on the outside that they don't get to control. You get to control what's happening there in the HQ and like the partnerships you make. Then there's this whole world of things that happen, whether it's climate or politics or, whatever it might be. If the Milwaukee Brewers win the World Series at some point, I will be spending all of the money I have on just celebrations. So anything else that's been happening for you? I mean, if I come to the HQ this summer, is there still going to be nice peanuts to eat? What's the situation
Yes.
there?
Actually, that's kind of evolving into something now. We are roasting the cashews and walnuts, and we're actually going to be launching a nut roasting brand.
Wow, really? That was just kind of
yeah.
me kind of off the cuff there. I didn't know that.
No, it was just kind of something that we experimented with, something that, I found out about, that Mike Sivitz was roasting and selling hazelnuts. He comes from the Willamette Valley, which is one of the hazelnut capitals of the world after Turkey. Turkey's the big one, but next after Turkey is the Willamette Valley. And so he was roasting and selling these nuts in his shop in Corvallis. I heard that on some days he was selling more nuts than he was selling coffee. So
that's such an interesting thing to me. And it's one of the reasons I love this show. And I kind of actually got my start years ago. I don't think I've ever mentioned this, like writing a blog about entrepreneurs. And it was all about people who were starting businesses in their garage. And it was always so surprising to me, the things you find in your own community when you start looking for them, just wandering around and going, well, I wonder what's happening behind that door. And, I would have never known that about nuts in the Willamette Valley. That's just, that's going to send me down a Wikipedia rabbit hole later today.
That's been a lot of fun to kind of branch out into that. Because the same advantages that you have with coffee beans translate to the nuts. You've got uniformity, you've got repeatability, you've got just the way that they're heated in this motion. If you think of kind of these nuts moving around the whole time and being heated while they're being moved, it just does a really good job of heating them uniformly and bringing out the natural oils that are already in these nuts. So like cashews have a very high fat content. And when you heat them in this way, it brings all that to life and it gives it its own flavor without the need for salt or sugar. Most other roasted nuts use oil in some way, like they cook it, they put them in a vat, kind of deep frying them, heating them that way. So even though they're just nuts without salt or sugar or anything, they are cooked in oils, and oftentimes, these are plant-based oils that have their own issues that I think are kind of surfacing more and more now when people are talking about these oils. So this is a purely natural product that is just heated inside this roaster, and we can use the same concepts that we do for coffee.
It's a great way to diversify. Is there a brand name for these nuts that we can keep our eyes out on yet? Or is it still
that is
under?
What we're working on right now. That's kind of the challenge. You think, oh, we'll just, whip up a brand and throw it out there. And now we're like, we're turning the stone over 1,000 times. Like, well, that name is too cheeky or that's too campy. How do we get across what we're trying to say? It's going to be a higher end product. So how do we market it? How is the labeling done? What kind of package it's in? All these things are kind of, where we're at right now, but it's going to be very sooner than later.
I'm looking forward to that. Anything I missed today? Anything new about Sivitz that we want to share with people before we pop out?
We did add a few things. We have a new sound shield. One of the biggest drawbacks to the roaster, based on our feedback, is that it's a little bit noisy. But if you see here, we've got this sound shield. That's the black shield that you see there is covering the combustion chamber now. So we're right around 80, 82 decibels when we're roasting with that. So you no longer need headphones, to protect your ears. That has been very well received, and we've seen, a pretty good order rate with those people who are ordering roasters, picking those up. We're about to release a destoner and a bean loader.
Oh, cool.
So we'll take away some of the physical drawbacks of loading 15 kilos of time into the roast chamber. And then we're working on a heat exchanger with Oregon State University. So we're going to be trying to bring some of the heat back into the roaster, and it'll be done with most likely with like a heat coil, where you're not actually bringing the smoky air back into it, because that's been an issue with others who have tried to do this. But you are just bringing some of the heat as it's leaving the exhaust stack back into the roaster. And only a little bit of that can do quite a bit for reducing the amount of gas it takes to heat the roaster.
Sure. And always just I just paid my electric bill this morning, so yeah, let's try to be more efficient if we can.
and we got some feedback from one of our biggest roasters, Brown Bag Coffee Roasters in Quebec. They've just done in December. They did their 4,000th roast on this machine, and they've had it for about a year and a half now. And they did the calculations, and it worked out to about 2 cents per pound of coffee of roasting. So 33 pounds was costing about, I think, 78 cents Canadian of fuel. So I think it's more efficient than people think it is.
Yeah, that's much less than I would have guessed. And that's cool that they did that. And it's nice to know that, I think just for anyone listening, like 4,000 roasts in a year and a half is a lot of roasts. I mean, it's taken a pounding. So if they're still pushing away at it, I mean, one thing that always amazes me about roasters in general, and is just the longevity of some of the really well-made roasters. It's going to take maintenance, it's going to take work, but you'll see roasters that have been in action for dozens of years.
Yeah, we just put in a new roaster in Tucson at Arbuckle's Coffee, which is a brand that's been around since the 1800s. And they're running it next to a half-bag roaster from 1975.
Wow. It's just such a cool industry, I think.
Yeah, there's still quite a few of them running. And that's one other thing that we're working on now. I'm hoping by the end of the year, we're going to be getting into the half-bag, so the 35-kilo size.
Cool.
So we'll have one coming up towards the end of the year where we can double the capacity of what this one can do.
Well, I think it's just a lot of continued growth. I mean, when we talked a couple of years ago, there was a lot of, I don't want to say stress and anxiety, but it was still kind of at the beginning of that climb. And now you're kind of halfway up the hill, it seems like, but I think I can see more optimism. Like, yeah, this is working. Like, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep pushing. Not that it wasn't there wasn't confidence, just that, now you're a couple steps further down that path, and it's cool to see.
It's the snowball effect. When you're in the beginning, when the snowball is slow, even though it's gaining traction, it's still not gaining much traction. But when the snowball gets bigger, as it gains traction, it just becomes exponential in reaching out and getting the word out and just creating the awareness that we needed in the beginning, but weren't getting.
Well, I hope that we're able to be part of that. And obviously, that, yes. I'm grateful you came back on the show, and I'm grateful for everyone listening. They can find the links to Sivitz.com, at the Sivitz on Instagram, in our show notes, in the newsletter. Yes, sir.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
We will be at the expo in Houston. We're going to have a booth there. We'll have another booth, 20 by 10 booth there, where we will have the SRM 15, and hope everybody can come by and visit us at the booth if you're there.
I know that I will be. And the show is part of our Roast West Coast network. Shout out to the presenting sponsor, Roastar, the coffee packaging company. They really enable us to offer up this platform to tell coffee stories, share businesses, share ideas. Find them online at roastar.com. Thank you to Michael for coming back, and to everyone listening. Please tip your baristas. Be sure to drink good coffee. And in the future, make sure you're eating good peanuts.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thanks for inviting me back.